All right, welcome along to this week's group coaching call. I'm going to be discussing a threshold training, the how and the why. What are the benefits and why do we do it? So first of all, what is threshold training? We're going to cover off some of the key terms. We're going to look at the differences between lactate and lactic acid, looking at the benefits of threshold training, and then we'll look at some examples, sticking to cycling and running because they're the more easier to define examples. So first of all, some of the key terms there, lactate threshold, that's the point where the amount of lactate or lactic acid that you are producing exceeds how much you can clear comfortably. Typically, that's around 4 millimoles per litre. Any higher than that, and your body can't keep up with getting rid of the lactic acid, and everything becomes a whole lot tougher. Now, all these terms listed here are all very similar things, actually. They have discrete and defined terms that does make them completely different from each other. But at the end of the day, for us as athletes, they're all, for all intents and purposes, pretty much the same thing. If you were to look at your performance in a 10K or a 40K, a 10K running race or a 40K cycling time trial, there wouldn't be much difference between any of these points. So the maximum lactate steady state, that's the steady state effort that you can maintain maximally without creating too much lactic acid. Typically, it is going to be about an hour long that you can sustain that. Now, if you're riding just below the point where your lactate starts to increase too much, you can sustain that. The thing that's going to limit your performance with that is not the lactate itself, but how much carbohydrate you've got to fuel yourself. And that's what's going to drop out at about that 1 hour mark. Not the fact that you've suddenly stopped the ability to remove that lactic acid. It's the lack of fuel to sustain that intensity. The functional threshold power is more a key term for cyclists, although there is a little bit of crossover with running with a power, whether using a power meter like a Stride or using power data generated by a Garmin or an Apple Watch or Chorus. Your functional threshold power is the amount of power you can sustain for an hour. You'll notice a similar theme coming along here. Now, there's a number of ways of measuring that. One of the key ways is to go out and ride as hard as you can for an hour. Another way is to ride hard for 20 minutes and say, well, you're going to have ridden slightly harder than you would have if you had to sustain that for an hour and take 5% off. There are other ways of doing it, such as using a ramp test, but those are the more popular and precise ways of doing it. Critical power, that's more looking at the running side of things, particularly from the Stride perspective, although that term does get used with cycling as well. And Joe Friel was one that predominantly used that in the early days. Critical power, you can often, or is often, has a duration attached with it. So critical power, 60 minutes, is typically what's referred to when you're just talking about critical power. But if you're talking about critical power 1 minute, that's the power that you can sustain for 1 minute. And deflection point, that is quite an old school term, utilized from what was known as a Conconi test, which was very popular back in the 80s with the early introduction of heart rate monitors and using that technology for training. It is effectively a ramp test, and as you got harder and harder and harder intensity through that ramp test, it got to a point where the data deflected from the tangent that it was on, and it was usually obvious to look at. And once again, that was the point that you could sustain for that hour duration roughly. So all these terms thrown out there, they can be used interchangeably, but I don't suggest using them interchangeably on the internet, because someone's bound to get very critical and give you their opinion and tell you that you are wrong. But for all intents and purposes, as athletes, we can use them effectively the same structure. The difference between lactate and lactic acid is once again very subtle, but technically there is a difference. So lactic acid, a lot of people are familiar through chemistry with hydrochloric acid, made up of hydrogen ions and chloride ions. So it exists as an acid where you've got some as the compound of the hydrogen and the chloride, and some hydrogen ions floating around freely and some chloride floating around freely. Same occurs with lactic acid. You get the lactate and the hydrogen ions separating out, and it's the hydrogen ions actually that cause the discomfort and the burning sensation in our legs or our arms or in our muscles. So the lactic acid is basically lactate and the hydrogen ions together as the compound, as well as in the state of flux between them. All right, so threshold training and the benefits of it. One of the key ones there is to move the deflection point to the right. We want to improve our performance and get better at tolerating the lactic acid. To do this, our liver gets more effective at removing the lactic acid, and we can clear that off, and we can keep exercising at that higher intensity. The other benefit of doing a threshold intensity training, particularly for the longer durations, is developing mental fortitude and or toughness. One of these things we can't define or definitively measure, and our Garmin's not going to tell us that, but it is one of the benefits. We get better with more exposure to the higher intensity, the more we can tolerate it. So threshold sessions themselves, typically the intervals are between 5 and 20 minutes effort. There are exceptions to this. The intensity is level 4. The total duration can be up to 60 minutes at level 4, based on our definition that it's the intensity we can sustain for an hour. We're not going to be able to feasibly do it for longer than an hour, but it's going to be very tough to sustain for that hour, and you wouldn't want to be doing that on a regular occurrence. Bearing in mind that if we're spending 60 minutes in a workout at level 4, we're going to need some recovery in there, and the total duration of the workout is going to be longer than that, 90 minutes plus, more than likely. Our recovery is relatively short compared to the amount of or the duration of the interval at level 4. Typically, it's going to be around a work to rest ratio of 5 to 1, but can be as short as 2 to 1. So here's some examples of some running workouts. Now, the classic is 3 by 5 minutes at level 4 with a 1 minute rest interval at level 1. That's often a go-to of mine, particularly for longer distance runners or triathletes in a taper week. It's reduced volume compared to what they had been doing in some of the other sessions. Hence the reason why that is a go-to for a taper week. But it also is sometimes used early in a build-up to give exposure to that, or if someone's got limited time in which to fit in some training. A favorite session of mine that I haven't actually done for a long time, and I'll say I rediscovered it as I was going through looking for examples and researching for this presentation, is the Flying Scotsman pyramid session. It's basically 5 reps, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute at level 4, with half that duration at level 2 as the rest interval. 2.5 minutes after the 5 minutes of work, 2 minutes after the 4 minutes of effort, 1.5, then 1 minute. And you might go, well, why no 30 seconds after the last one? And that's because you're straight into the cool down. And then the special Ks, Jan Frodeno's 1K reps. It's a nice simple session, 5 by 1K at level 4, and you're only getting 60 seconds rest. Now, Jan Frodeno, for those that aren't familiar with the name, is an Ironman world champion. He's won multiple triathlons all around the world, particularly over the Ironman distance. But he also won the Beijing gold medal in the Olympic distance triathlon as well. All right, moving on, looking at some cycling examples. Now, any of the workouts will structure whether you're cycling, running, kayaking. So the 3 by 5 minutes with a 1 minute rest interval fits exactly the same for cycling. But these ones are a little bit more cycling specific. Michael Jacques' solid threshold ride A, 5 by 5 minutes at level 4 with a full 5 minutes at level 2 rest interval in between. Now, like I said, the work to rest ratio does vary. In this example, for each minute of work, we're having a full minute of rest interval, so it's 1 to 1. So this session is a little bit longer in duration than it probably needs to be, but we get a good exposure to level 2, and we get a good chance to clear that lactic acid out and start each interval afresh. The Quad Crusher series, this particular workout, Quad Crusher 1, is 3 by 10 minutes at level 4. And every 2 minutes throughout that workout, you're standing up and attacking on the pedals for 12 to 15 pedal strokes up at level 5 or higher. So it builds up that lactic acid a bit more, and then you're trying to clear it while still riding at level 4 for the next 2 minutes before you attack again. For this particular version, there's a full 10 minutes of rest at level 2 between reps. So in summary, level 4 or threshold training develops a higher functional threshold power or sustained pace for running and swimming. You can tolerate and clear lactic acid more effectively. You are mentally tougher. Efforts are 5 to 20 minutes in duration at level 4, with up to 60 minutes total duration at level 4 within the workout. And the recovery is relatively short between efforts. Now, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. We'll move into the normal Q&A, and if you've got any particular questions about your training, then we'll go through to that. Now, normally I go in the order people arrived in, but Kelly, you're at the top of my screen right now, so I'll open things up to you first.
Nothing like being put on the spot. Well, so any specific questions that I have?
Yeah.
I was just busy nosing at my at Training Peaks just to see how long I spent yesterday in level 4 or above for my run. So yesterday I spent like 15 minutes at level 4 or above out of the 44-minute run. So yeah. Any specific questions? No, I mean, I just sort of really want to catch up with you. You've shared your calendar, so I just kind of really want to nut out a bit of a game plan for the next 4 weeks before the South Island Ultra, and just get a bit of a handle on what my maximum distance run is going to be in the lead up. Just because, of course, I've got school holidays coming up, so I've just got a couple of pinch points with kids home on holiday, and I've got Michael overseas for a week as well. So I just want to know what I've got coming at me, just so I can figure out how I'm going to fit that stuff in and where.
Yeah, so we'll discuss that in a lot more detail when we catch up face to face. Wednesday's probably the best day on my calendar, but you've got the opportunity there to pick and choose the times that I've got available.
Yep.
The crux of it, the long run, is going to be the South Island Ultra in preparation for the Crazy K's backyard.
Cool.
But we will schedule some long-ish runs around your other commitments with school holidays and that. So we'll sort that out with the detail when we catch up.
So what's sort of going to be my longest run, like up to 30 Ks, or?
We'll work that out based on when you've got the opportunities, because we don't want to be doing ultra long runs the week before or a couple of weeks out. So yeah, when I've got that information in front of me, then we'll make some decisions around it. I'm not in a position to say right now because I don't know what that availability is going to be like.
Cool. No, that's all good. Awesome.
Sweet. Anything else before we move on to Jess?
Nope.
All right. Well, great work yesterday and also on Wednesday. And like I said, in Training Peaks all through March has been a really great month for you and the progressions with your running.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Alrighty, Jess.
Hello.
Someone else has had a fantastic March, going faster and faster every week. Both you and Kelly, very similar distances as well, with you racing 3,000 meters on the track and Kelly with her 5Ks.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Well done on the North Islands as well.
Yeah, that was a odd race. I don't know how I exactly ran the exact same time to the second. That's a bit odd, but I seem to. But I did run it pretty much by myself, so I guess I didn't have that same. I don't know if things would have changed if I ran it differently, but I'm happy with the consistency, I guess. Better than running slower. And the person in front of me was like too far, even if I wanted to. So
yeah. The key difference between that and the Waikato champs, you're a lot steadier, a lot consistent pace. We don't have the lap times that you ran. I'd imagine they were going to be within a couple of seconds with each other.
Yeah, I have them. I can send them to you if you want, because the live results website, when you click on my data, it has like each lap.
Do you have that for the Waikato champs as well?
Not for the Waikato, no.
If you had, it would be really great to look at a comparison between them. I think you'll find the Waikato champs, because it was a little bit more tactical, and you ran a lot harder initially.
Yeah,
you'll see a lot more variation in your pace. Whereas North Island champs, you're a lot more consistent, which obviously we've gone into the race with a slightly different plan as well.
Yeah.
So the lot more strategic, tactical race at Waikato's, and a lot more steady state at the North Island champs. So awesome work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just have one thing for this week's training. Obviously, I've got my school triathlon on Tuesday, so that's there. And then on Saturday, when I normally do my long run, I'm meant to be doing this 12 hours of volleyball thing for fundraising for the end of the year. So I was thinking maybe you can move my long run to Friday, because I'll still be able to do that, but it's just I won't have time on the Saturday because I'll be playing volleyball from 8 till 8.
No, that sounds like a reasonable solution to that. So we'll just swap them around.
Yeah. And then I think that's all from me.
Awesome. All right, we'll open it up to you, Gareth, if you want to unmute.
Yep, sure. I don't really have any specific questions. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, hear you fine, mate.
Cool. Sorry, just in my cool down on my ride. Yeah, no specific questions. As you know, I'm doing the 2-week FTP Builder Challenge. So I'll take bets on how much my FTP is going to increase. But that's really it for me.
Perfect. I'm going to go 2%.
2%. Anybody else? Kelly, Jess?
I'll go 3. Oh,
They're both going 3.
Yeah, I'll go 3.
They've got more faith in you than I have.
Oh dear.
So it'll be
No,
interesting
that's
to
all good.
see how
I've got
and boost up your FTP of 2 weeks of solid training. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I feel like the 2-week block doesn't have heaps of really hard efforts in it, so it'll be interesting to see what effect it has.
yeah. No, I'm
Cool.
keen to see that data as well.
How many other people have run this plan?
You're number 1.
Okay, cool. So I'm guinea pig. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Well, that's it from me.
But obviously there's a lot higher volume of cycling than what you normally do over that fortnight period. So
Yeah, I'm coping all right so far. It's been fine.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm a weekend, so we'll see how this next week goes, eh?
Yeah, there's some tougher sessions coming.
All right, I'm gonna mute now, so I'll stop breathing heavily in everybody's ears. Sorry.
No worries. Awesome. Thanks for that. Any other questions from anyone before we wrap up totally?
Hey, yep, I'll just ask a quick question, Ray, because I'm just
Go for it.
nosing my calendar and what you've got loaded up. Saturday, you've got a 2-hour trail run. You've said, do you want that, like, do you just want me to do that on the wilderness trail, or do you want me to actually find like some bit more of a gradient?
Wilderness trail will be fine. Try and go somewhere a little bit different, give you some exposure to, excuse me, somewhere other than the normal 10Ks either side of your house, if you can. Get out into Qwik or somewhere like that, so that you've got that experience prior to the race.
Yeah, because I'll probably do that a bit earlier this week. I might do that Wednesday before the rain comes through, because I've got AgFest Friday, Saturday. So I'm sort of out all Friday, Saturday this week. So I'll just rejig my calendar a wee bit, but I reckon I'll probably pick that up maybe even Tuesday after my rest tomorrow. I might go and do this run.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, so I'll just drag them around in Training Peaks anyway myself, and I'll just make them fit where I can make them fit this week.
Perfect.
Cool.
No worries. Anything else from Jess or Gareth? All right, well, we'll wrap things up. Thanks again, team. All the best for this week. Well done with the successes that you've all had. And yeah, we'll catch up next week. Actually, one thing I do want, if you've got any topics that you'd like to nominate, that you'd like me to cover off in the next few weeks with one of these group coaching calls, I'm keen to have some suggestions of what you'd like to hear about, and I'll put those together and present them next week, week after that.
I'm always interested in hearing about running to power, because it's just still something I always find can be a bit hit and miss.
Perfect. I'll look.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, like sometimes my warm up, I struggle to hit my power, but then on my cool down after I've done intervals, like I'm then above it. Like I don't know, the different things that feed into power and that.
That's right. Jess runs with power, and I know Jamie, who's not on the call, does as well. So he will be keen to hear that as well.
Yes.
Perfect. Right. All the best, team. And
thank you, Ray.
if not before.
Cool.
Thank
See ya.
you.
See ya.